Dawn stretched thin and cold across Highgate Downs, the Millionaire's private auction grounds, turning puddles of yesterday's storm into mirrors that caught the clouds and shattered them under anxious boots. Hampton Vale arrived ahead of the crowd, a silhouette carved from cashmere and ruthlessness, trailing cigarette smoke that smelled of cedar and contempt. He gave no greeting to the stable boys who flanked him like nervous satellites. He only flicked ash toward the straw and pointed at the battered trailer rumbling up the service lane. Inside that steel box, a Colt stood alone. He was all angles, hip bones sharp enough to slice bread, knees swollen from nights of slamming against metal, a split ear crusted with dried blood. His black coat should have gleamed, but mud masked the sheen, and every rib announced itself like a prison bar under skin stretched too tight. He did not whinny. He did not stamp. He simply watched the half-open door with a soldier's resignation, waiting for the next order that would not include escape. Vale's newest assistant, an underfed intern on loan from some equine college, winced as he unlatched the gate. "Sir, he's in rough shape. Maybe we should save the sermon," Vale drawled, flicking his hand. "The market wants speed, pedigree, spectacle. That bag of bones offers none of the above. Get him out. Let the auctioneer do his charity routine. I'm done bleeding money on miscalculations." The Colt slipped on the ramp, legs splaying, head jerking up as chains rattled. His body froze in expectation of another strike, but the boy only tugged gently, guilt bending his shoulders. Together they crossed the mud, and the Colt's hooves left prints like shattered question marks. Spectators gathered, breeders in tailored tweed, gamblers with restless eyes, socialites in jewel-toned coats pretending they understood horses. Cameras hovered on drones, streaming live for online bidders waiting to pounce on prospects with exotic lineage. Yet every lens drifted when the battered Colt appeared. Officer Mara Khan stepped from her county truck, kicking the door shut with a hollow clang that echoed across the yard. Her uniform wasn't a crisp parade blue, it was the weathered brown of livestock protection, frayed at cuffs from years of fieldwork. She wore her dark hair in a messy knot, practicality trumping vanity, and her eyes, large, amber, unblinking, absorbed cruelty the way old barns absorb rain. She logged arrivals with a stylus, dutiful as always, until the Colt's silhouette stuttered across her peripheral vision. She turned. 1 heartbeat. 2. Something inside her chest tightened like reins pulled too fast. The clipboard lowered. Words died before they reached her tongue. A flashbulb popped. The Colt reared halfway, not high enough to break rope but high enough to reveal the lattice of scars scoring his belly. Vale chuckled over the rim of his espresso thermos. "Drama queen," he sneered, then addressed the crowd. "All right, folks, let's start the show. Opening bid. Meet buyers welcome." A few smirks, some polite coughs. Silence thickened. The auctioneer, a rotund man with a walrus mustache, cleared his throat and tried again, his voice dipping into carnival brightness. "Gentleman's prospect here. Needs fattening, sure, but look at that cannon bone length. Could turn around under the right program." Still nothing. Mara stepped forward unconsciously, boots squelching. She could feel the Colt's frightened breathing, hear the wet rasp layered under each exhale. There was knowledge in his eyes, painfully human. Not the soft pleading of barn-raised foals, but the wary calculus of creature betrayed too many times to count. Vale snorted. 0. Fine. Send him to processors. I'll donate the pittance to charity and post about it. Good optics all around. The assistant tugged the rope, but the Colt refused to budge this time. Not defiance, paralysis. His hooves rooted into sludge as if mud might turn to stone. Panic's first tremor shivered through his tendons. One more pull and the ramp would echo with bone. A whisper cut through the drizzle. "Wait." Mara's voice carried farther than volume justified, borne on the hush that falls when fate shifts grains of sand. The auctioneer hesitated. Vale arched an eyebrow, amused. "Inspector. He qualifies as evidence under Statute 16.b, Mara said, quoting fast enough to hide the shake in her throat. "Suspected cruelty, deprivation, and abandonment. I'm impounding him for veterinary assessment. The auctioneer's jaw sagged. Vale laughed outright, deep and theatrical. Impounding? On what budget? Your department begs for bandages. I'll manage. She stepped closer to the Colt, lowering herself until she crouched at eye level, knees sinking. From her pocket she produced a shriveled apple slice left over from yesterday's lunch. Its sugary scent cut through manure. She extended it on her palm. The Colt's nostrils flared. Wariness wrestled with hunger. 30 heavy seconds dragged by. Then his muzzle brushed her hand, soft as moth wings. His teeth crunched, and juice dribbled down her wrist. The sound, so ordinary, felt seismic. Mara exhaled. So did everyone watching, though most didn't realize they'd held breath. Vale clapped slowly, sarcasm dripping. Touching. Truly. Take a bow, officer. But feeding him doesn't print paperwork. No magistrate will sign a seizure without cause. Document the injuries, Mara instructed the assistant, whose guilt brightened to purpose. He lifted his phone and began shooting photos, zooming on each welt and abrasion. The Colt endured it, still chewing, eyes never leaving Mara's. A siren blipped as Deputy Carla Ruiz pulled up, alerted by Mara's earlier text. Together they filed necessary forms, a flurry of officialdom dancing beneath lowering clouds. The crowd, sensing no profit, drifted toward warmer tents and glossier specimens. Only Vale remained, curiosity twinned with irritation. You'll bankrupt yourself saving that one, he warned. I breed champions for breakfast money. Sentiment breaks bank accounts. Mara straightened, mud streaking her trousers. Champions break legs when pushed too hard. Sentiment mends them. He rolled his eyes, turned away, and lit another cigarette, exhaling contempt that curled like a dying spirit. Deputy Ruiz reversed the trailer to the pen. The ramp dropped. The Colt hesitated again, but Mara placed a hand on his shoulder blade, a light, non-threatening weight. Forward, she whispered. Trust is always whispered. He stepped. Once. Twice. Then up the ramp, into straw scattered for cushion. The door latched. Rain intensified, slanting sideways until the world blurred. Mara signed final lines on Ruiz's tablet. The deputy nodded, shifting into gear. As the trailer inched away, both women glimpsed the Colt through a narrow slat, one chocolate eye reflecting empty grandstands and a tomorrow not yet promised. Behind them, Hampton Vale stood beneath an umbrella held by an employee, smoke haloing his head like cheap incense. He watched the trailer vanish onto the county road, his jaw locked in the grin of a gambler who thinks the other player just bet the house on a busted hand. He believed in numbers, not redemption, and the numbers said the Colt would be dead weight within a month. Mara climbed into her pickup, adrenaline ebbing into exhaustion. Wipers squealed across the windshield. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel, not from cold, but from the weight of silent vows stacking in her mind. She dialed Noah. Voicemail. She left a clipped message. Got a rescue. Bad shape. Need shelter tonight. Call me. She paused, adding softer, please. She dropped the phone on the passenger seat and stared through rain at Vale's retreating figure. In yards and dollars, he owned this world. But in the realm of living, breathing resilience, ownership was trickier. Sometimes it shifted with a single apple slice. The road out of Highgate Downs cut between walls of dark fir. Headlights carved tunnels of silver through mist. The trailer ahead swayed gently, brake lights glowing like distant embers. Mara kept her distance, thinking about budgets she didn't have, stall space that didn't exist, and a Colt whose survival odds calculated to fractions no accountant would tolerate. Yet beneath her fear, a thread of stubborn gladness wound tight. Rain drummed harder. Thunder rolled in low, bone-deep rumbles. She remembered childhood monsoons in Karachi, how she'd counted seconds between flash and boom, believing that measuring storms could tame them. She counted now. Lightning struck behind a ridge. 8 seconds later thunder answered. The storm was far enough. They would outrun it if they kept moving. At mile marker 22, Ruiz's patrol car turned north toward the county vet, taillights blinking farewell. Mara continued west, toward Noah's Valley, where barns leaned like old men listening for gossip and fences sagged under stories. The road narrowed, potholes bloomed. Every jolt made her wince, imagining shockwaves through fragile legs inside the trailer. She forced herself to think ahead: blankets, iodine, gentlest feed. She pictured Noah's resigned smile, Luna's quiet gaze. They had always opened their gates before, surely they would again. An hour later she crested the ridge overlooking Hawksbill Hollow. Evening fog collected in the bowl of land like soup in a cracked bowl. She flashed headlights twice. Down below, a farmhouse porch light winked on, then off, a signal older than voicemail. Relief edged her breath, but dread followed. Convincing Noah wouldn't be easy. Convincing county supervisors to fund long-term rehab would be harder. And somewhere inside that battered Colt, trauma lay coiled, ready to strike or surrender. She would need patience measured in years, and Mara had never planned farther than the next cruelty case. Still, as she turned onto the gravel drive, stones pinging the undercarriage, she felt the same hard spark she'd felt kneeling in the mud, a recognition, as if the Colt had stepped out of her own memories of being underestimated. She parked beside Noah's rusting pickup. The barn doors hung ajar, yellow light spilling like butter across the yard. Noah emerged, denim jacket collar flipped, limp pronounced by cold. He eyed the trailer, then her. "What have you done now, Con?" "Something stupid," she admitted, stepping into rain. "But maybe brave." He sighed. The sound of a man who has learned courage can be costly. Yet he moved to the latch. "Let's see stupid." Inside, the Colt trembled from exhaustion. Steam lifted off his coat. Noah clicked his tongue, gentle yet assessing. "Seen worse," he muttered, though his eyes said he hadn't. They guided Valor, though his name was not yet spoken, into a stall padded with fresh straw. He nearly collapsed but caught himself, folding knees slowly, lowering until he rested. Mara draped a blanket over his flank. The fabric smelled of cedar shavings and old successes. Noah leaned on the stall gate. "You'll need a miracle." "He will," Mara corrected softly, surprising herself with certainty. Lightning flared again, illuminating the barn rafters. The Colt did not flinch. His ears twitched toward the open world beyond the doorway, as if he recognized Storm's music and welcomed it as proof he was still alive. Mara watched him settle, breathing shallow but steady. She felt the narrative clicking into place. Villain, victim, unlikely guardian. Yet stories were never that simple. They branched, tangled, defied endings. Even now, threads she couldn't see stretched toward hurdles unimagined. She closed the stall and turned to Noah. "Tomorrow, vet first. Then we eat numbers until they taste like hope." Noah huffed a laugh. "Hope is expensive. Then we'll pay installments." Outside, rain eased into drizzle, as if the sky, having delivered its warning, chose mercy. In the hush, the Colt exhaled a long, rattling sigh. For one fragile moment, barn and earth and guardian aligned in precarious peace. Mara tucked hands into pockets, stepped into the gloom, and wondered what shape dawn would take when the storm finally passed. She could not know that somewhere beyond the hills, Hampton Vale rehearsed public apologies in case his discarded Colt turned into a headline. Nor could she foresee the way one silent girl's drawing would chart the path ahead. She only knew the night smelled like wet hay and stubborn, shining second chances, and that was enough to keep her moving forward toward fragile daylight. The gravel crackled under Noah's boots as he crossed the yard, the mist curling at his knees like an old dog that remembered his steps. The barn door creaked open under his hand, protesting with age and rust, and a rectangle of light spilled out into the rain-heavy dusk. Inside, the smell of liniment, hay, and damp wood clung to the air. Noah Reyes had spent most of his life trying to patch what time had taken apart, and tonight that meant figuring out why Mara Khan had dragged a half-dead Colt into his hollow just as the season was turning sharp. The Colt lay curled in the back stall, legs tucked beneath a frame too long starved to carry its own weight. The blanket Mara had tossed over him earlier had slipped sideways, revealing more of his battered coat. His left eye, open and unblinking, followed Noah's approach with a tired awareness of something used to being watched but rarely helped. "He's not going to last long if he doesn't start eating," Noah muttered. Mara stood on the far side of the stall, arms crossed, watching the colt breathe. Her boots were still caked with mud from Highgate Downs, and the circles under her eyes were darker now, shadows that made her look older than she was. "He ate a few mouthfuls of mash," she said quietly. "More than yesterday. I gave him water with molasses. He drank." Noah rested a hand on the gate. "He's got old injuries. The kind that don't show up in photos but never go away. He's been hobbled. Ridden too young, I'd guess. Maybe struck hard and often. I know. What you don't know is that a colt like this doesn't just need rescue. He needs rebuilding." His voice was rough, but not unkind. "That takes time. Which you don't have. Nor do I." Mara looked down at the straw. "I'm not asking for a miracle. Just shelter. Just long enough for him to stand on his own." He didn't answer right away. Then he glanced toward the house. "Luna's already given him a name, if that helps your case." Mara blinked. "She did." Noah nodded. "Valor. Drew it on a feed bucket this morning. Sketch of him too. It's rough, but she got the eyes right." The colt shifted, groaning softly. Mara stepped forward, crouched beside the stall wall, her voice lowered to a breath. "You hear that? You've got a name now. Someone's watching, little man." Noah didn't say what he was thinking, that names had weight, and sometimes it was cruel to hang one on a dying thing. Instead, he reached over to straighten the blanket across the colt's back. "He's freezing. I'll get another." By morning, the rain had passed but the cold remained, crisp and cruel. The frost had crept in overnight, painting the windows in lace. Inside the barn, Mara poured warm bran mash into a shallow pan and set it near the colt's nose. He sniffed but didn't move. Not until Luna entered. She didn't speak, she hadn't since her mother's funeral 2 winters ago, but her presence was like sunlight filtered through cotton. She knelt a few feet away, opened her sketchpad, and began drawing. The scratching of pencil on paper was the only sound between them. The colt raised his head an inch, looked at her, then nudged the pan. Slow, shaky bites followed. "Luna," Mara whispered, "you may have just saved a life." The girl didn't look up. She kept drawing, delicate lines forming legs, muzzle, the bent left ear. She captured the colt not as he was, but as he might become. Over the next few days, Valor began to change. Slightly, imperceptibly to most, but not to Mara or Luna. His appetite returned in hesitant waves. He began standing for longer stretches. He flinched less when Noah entered the stall. His ribs still jutted like scaffold poles, but something inside him, something vital, had stopped shrinking. Mara set up camp in the guest room, a modest space with quilted curtains and a warped floorboard that always creaked when she stepped on it at night. She took calls on the porch, filing incident reports and budget extensions, trying to secure long-term medical support. The county had no funds for long-term rehabilitation. No surprises there. She paid out of pocket where she could. When she couldn't, she bartered. Promised favors. Stretched her reputation until it bent. Noah kept his skepticism close, but his hands gentle. He shoed the old draft mare next door to cover feed. He brewed poultices for the colt's joints. Every night he'd sit outside Valor's stall with a mug of black coffee and a quiet stare that said he didn't trust this arrangement but wouldn't be the one to break it. One afternoon, Mara walked in to find Luna brushing Valor with a soft curry comb. The colt stood still, eyes half closed, his body no longer quaking with each touch. Luna didn't look up as she worked, but she smiled, just a twitch, barely there. Mara crouched beside them. "He's starting to believe in us." Luna nodded once, then reached into her sketchpad and tore out a page. It was a new drawing, Valor leaping, front hooves high, mane flowing. At the bottom she had printed a single word in block letters, hope. Mara swallowed. Her voice thickened. "That's what he is now, isn't he? Noah stood in the doorway behind them. He's something. But if you want the county to keep him, he's going to have to be more than a pretty face and a sad story. Meaning they'll euthanize him if he can't serve a function. His tone was matter-of-fact. Budget cycles start next month. The director's office will be looking for cuts. Animals without placement or purpose don't last long. Mara's jaw clenched. He didn't survive this long just to be erased. I don't disagree, Noah said. But he's going to have to prove it. And fast. That night, while Luna slept and Noah fixed a broken stall hinge, Mara sat with her laptop and dug through state directories. She searched programs, grants, competitions, anything that offered recognition and protection. A listing caught her eye, the State Mounted Skills Exhibition, open category. For horses demonstrating exceptional aptitude for ceremonial or service work. Winning entries were granted public funding for care and integration into official use. She read the description twice. Then again. The qualifications were brutal. Timed obstacle runs, controlled exposure tests, precision work, but not impossible. Not for a horse with valor's instincts. If they could train him in time. The next morning, she presented the idea over coffee. Noah raised an eyebrow. You want to enter him in a statewide competition? In 3 weeks. It could give him a role. A shield. Once he's listed as in service, they can't just eliminate him. He snorted. He can barely walk the yard without tripping. But he learns fast, she pressed. He doesn't panic, not the way broken horses usually do. He calculates, waits, watches. That's not fear, it's memory. He's been trained before. Maybe, Noah allowed. Or maybe he's just surviving long enough to collapse quietly. Luna, seated at the table with her cereal bowl, slid a new drawing toward them. This one showed valor beside a uniformed officer, proud and upright. A small badge was sketched into the tack. Underneath, she had drawn her own hand, reaching up to touch the horse's neck. Mara placed her palm over the image. We could give him that. Noah hesitated, then drank his coffee and muttered, We'd need to start now. They built a course in the field, makeshift barrels, cones, and wooden bridges. Noah mapped routines with chalk. Mara studied mounted police training guides by flashlight. Luna drew every night, updating Valor's progress in pages of charcoal and watercolor. Valor stumbled. A lot. But he also learned. He stopped skittering at tarp flaps. Took to the weighted saddle with minimal protest. One afternoon, Mara swung into the stirrups for the first time. Valor stood rock still until she settled, then walked forward as if he'd done it 100 times. Maybe he had. She ran her hand down his neck, fingers catching the faint scar tissue hidden beneath his mane. Where did you come from? She whispered. And who made you forget who you were? In town, word began to circulate. That the strange inspector was training a horse too thin to race, too soft to pull, too broken to matter. That she'd shacked up with a washed-up rodeo star and his silent daughter to chase some fool's dream. But Mara didn't care. She wasn't chasing a dream. She was rebuilding something from ash. On the 12th day, Noah came out of the barn with a stack of old veterinary papers. One caught his eye, an intake form from 5 years ago. A colt with a matching ear notch and a lopsided star had been sold to Vale's ranch for trial racing. Unpapered. Untraceable. Mara stared at it. So he was bred to run. He was bred to win, Noah corrected. And when he didn't, he was forgotten. Not anymore, she said. But as they leaned over the document, a voice crackled through Mara's phone. An alert. Her grant application for Valor's official intake had been denied. New regulation, animals must have traceable lineage and documented performance records. Her chest went cold. They moved the goalposts. Noah's face tightened. Vale must have heard about the exhibition. He doesn't want a headline saying his trash turned into gold. Mara looked out at the field where Luna was standing beside Valor, both watching the wind roll over the hills. The sun was dipping low, turning the Colt's coat into burnished copper. He was alive. He was standing. And he was not done. She took a deep breath. Then we changed the story. Noah glanced over. To what? She didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, she walked back into the barn and pulled out a faded tack box from her truck, one she hadn't touched since her academy graduation. Inside, folded in velvet, was a ceremonial halter from her old police unit. She traced the silver trim, then looked toward the barn door. It was time to teach Valor not just how to move, but how to command a room. Because the fight wasn't just for his life anymore. It was for the right to be seen. Dawn broke brittle and blue above Hawksbill Hollow, frost crusting every rail so hard each step sounded like cracking glass. Mara-laced boots still caked with auction mud and crossed the yard, guided by Valor's muffled wicker from the half-lit barn. Inside, Noah was coaxing sparks into the barrel stove, his breath puffing ghosts in air that smelled of liniment and old hay. The Colt lifted his head, coat gaining a faint mahogany shine after weeks of care, ribs still gaunt but eyes alert. "Ground's iron," Noah muttered, tapping the thermometer. "We work slow." "We work smart," Mara answered, fastening the ceremonial halter she'd polished through the night. 3 weeks until the exhibition, and Vale's spending money to shut every door. They led Valor to the practice field where Luna waited, scarf covering her mouth, sketchbook ready. Under her silent gaze the Colt threaded barrels, first at walk, then jog, gait smoothing as memory eclipsed fear. Each clean turn felt like another nail driven into the coffin of the life he had escaped. Jumps came next. Low rails, then higher. Valor cleared them with awkward elegance, landing stiff but determined. When they paused, Noah pressed a scar-laced fetlock. The horse flinched. "Old hairline fracture," he warned. "If we push too hard, we lose him." Before Mara could answer, Deputy Ruiz rolled up with a letter shaking in her hand. "New rule: all entrants must document bloodlines and prior placements. Effective today." Vale's checkbook had struck again. Mara's throat tightened. "We appeal." "Appeals closed," Ruiz said. "You have 14 days before the impound order reactivates." Mara steadied herself on Valor's withers. "Then we'll forge proof through performance." They worked first on trust. Mara spent hours hand-walking Valor through the orchard, letting fallen apples substitute cigarettes her nerves no longer tolerated. Each step taught him people could approach without pain. She read regulations aloud. "Section 7, Paragraph 4, she'd announce, states you must accept compliments with dignity," and the Colt would flick an ear as though filing legal precedent. Noah, skeptic turned strategist, mapped a ramp-up schedule on a chalkboard between stalls. Mondays, groundwork, lateral flexion, carrot stretches. Tuesdays, poles and tarp drags. Wednesdays, rest, massage, cold hose therapy. The pattern gave Valor's bones time to knit micro-tears into strength. It also gave Noah proof, numbers he could wave in bureaucrats' faces. Data was a dialect even penny-pinching officials respected. Luna floated among them like a small ghost of graphite and watercolor. She sketched every milestone: the first day Valor rolled in dust instead of standing rigid, the first time he nickered when Mara entered, the hesitant trot that turned into a buoyant canter across open pasture. Her drawings became field notes, hope pinned to corkboards, the kind of evidence only hearts recognized. On the 10th evening Mara found Noah seated on an overturned bucket, staring at an old belt buckle from his rodeo years. The silver was tarnished, inscription half-worn, "Ride to Rise." Without looking up he said, "Vale and I aren't so different. We both used bodies till they broke. He just never learned how to feel the snap." He closed his fist around the buckle. "Let's make sure this horse outlasts his memory." Word spread through local circles. Some neighbors offered bags of feed, a retired breeder donated vitamin supplements, and a class of third-graders mailed handmade rosettes stamped with "Run Brave." Yet gossip twisted generosity into mockery. Diner patrons joked that Noah was training a skeleton for prom. Each jab welded the trainer's resolve a little harder. Mara confronted her own shadow, the case 2 years back when she'd failed to save a starving Mustang. Paperwork stalled until euthanasia was the only legal remedy. That memory woke her at midnight, heart pounding louder than rain on tin. She would not repeat it. Valor's breathing from the adjacent stall became her lullaby, proof the world could still bend. When Vale's stallion Sovereign arrived at Highgate Downs for final prep, social media erupted in glossy images, braided tail, chrome legs, trainers in matching windbreakers. Vale posted, "Real champions are born, not rescued." Luna taped the printout to Valor's stall and scribbled across it, "Prove him wrong." The Colt sniffed the paper, then tried to chew it. Noah laughed for the first time in weeks. 5 days before the exhibition, the county finance office rejected Mara's supplemental request, citing deficit ceilings. Their email included a motivational quote about accepting limitations. Mara forwarded it to Noah with, "Ever seen a ceiling that could stop rain?" They doubled sessions. Noah clicked splits like a track coach while Mara adjusted stride lengths by whispering numbers. 1, 2, 3, lift. Valor responded to cadence, ears swiveling any time her count strayed. Trust had become a shared drumbeat. Pain remained the lingering enemy. At night Mara soaked the leg in warm Epsom water, singing low Urdu lullabies while steam fogged the chilly stalls. Noah sometimes joined, his baritone rough but steady on the refrains. Luna, perched in loft shadows, illustrated music as swirling lines wrapping around horse and humans like visible sound. During these vigils Mara saw scars she'd missed, a hair-thin line across Valor's eyelid, a patch of hide turned white where skin had once torn. Each blemish testified against the man who discarded him, and against every bystander who had seen suffering and called it commerce. 3 days out, Major Kessler sent word that the exhibition schedule had changed. Valor would run after Vale's Sovereign, turning their fight into spectacle, underdog following emperor. Noah cursed bureaucracy's taste for drama, but Mara answered, "Then the crowd will still be looking when it counts." On the penultimate night, a storm battered the valley. Wind slammed shutters, lightning speared ground so near it left glassy scars in the pasture. Valor, memory triggered, began circling his stall, sweat darkening his flank. Mara entered, unlatched the gate, and stood inside until his frantic pacing slowed. When thunder cracked, she didn't flinch. She set a hand on his neck and breathed measured counts. The horse mirrored her inhale, ribs easing. When calm returned she stepped back, and Valor, of his own choosing, pressed his forehead lightly to her shoulder. In that touch lay a covenant. He would carry her faith, she would carry his fear. Now the countdown measured in hours, not days. The trailer was packed, wraps, salve, Luna's ribbon, and every nail of Noah's brace shoe toolkit. Before sunrise Noah offered Mara the polished belt buckle. "For luck," he said. She clipped it inside her jacket, metal warm from his palm. It was only then, as engine rumble filled the yard, that Luna spoke again, voice stronger though still small. "Bring him home." Mara nodded, unable to promise victory, but she could promise return. She climbed into the cab, dew on the windshield catching first light like flares. The hollow shrank in the mirrors as they pulled away, but its stubborn lessons rode with them. Broken things are not finished things, storms may rattle bones but also sharpen them, and sometimes the quietest vow, courage, can drown the loudest money. As the ramp clanged shut, frost cracked beneath the trailer tires and a single robin sang from the bare elm, fragment of spring in dead winter. The note felt like prophecy, insisting that beginnings can perch where endings were planned. Mara listened until engine roar drowned the song, fixed her eyes on the highway threading through fog, and pressed 2 fingers to the belt buckle. She counted heartbeats to keep nerves in line, one for Luna, one for Noah, and one for every soul still fighting to be free. Dawn bled orange across the Capitol Fairgrounds, tinting the grandstand banners the color of flares. Trucks queued like supply lines, unloading warmbloods whose manes gleamed with cosmetic oil and whose riders wore tailoring crisp enough for a palace parade. Mara's state-issue pickup, mud still crusted along its wheel wells, looked like a stowaway from another century beside them, and the trailer behind it rattled every time Valor shifted weight. Noah killed the engine, stared at the coliseum of flags and scaffolds, and muttered that today featured only 2 entries: prove the Colt belonged, and get him home alive. They lowered the ramp. Fog spilled out, carrying the smell of alfalfa, antiseptic, and ammonia, ghosts of nervous horses. Valor stepped down, ears swiveling as if he could taste voltage in the cold air. His coat, painstakingly brushed by Luna at dawn, still bore gaps where hair had never regrown, yet the ceremonial halter lent him quiet authority, silver fittings capturing the sunrise. A cluster of spectators paused mid-stride, curiosity snagged by contrast, a scarred rescue wearing the harness of honor. One mother touched her phone screen to stream the oddity to her feed. Mara kept her hand on Valor's shoulder while Noah signed arrival forms at a table manned by volunteers in branded windbreakers. The clerk's gaze hovered on the blank lineage box. "Breed?" she asked. Noah's pen clicked. "American Spirit, no registry." She frowned but stamped the sheet. Bureaucracy preferred tidy labels, yet it could not deny a completed form. They were officially entered. Hampton Vale observed from a balcony above the warm-up arena, framed by banners and flanked by journalists he had personally invited. Sovereign, his coal-black stallion, trotted beneath him, hooves drumming like artillery. Cameras adored the symmetry, the spotless tack, the rider in matching livery. Vale lifted a glass of citrus water, his smile tight and precise when he spotted Mara leading Valor toward the schooling ring. He whispered to an aide, who hurried away clutching an envelope. The schooling ring pulsed with anxiety. Riders rehearsed precision pivots, grooms adjusted flash nosebands, loudspeakers spat schedules in clipped, metallic syllables. Valor entered at a walk. A palomino spun too fast nearby, flinging sand. Valor only blinked. Mara exhaled her first breath since leaving the truck. She checked his bandaged leg, tightened a girth hole, then swung astride. The Colt accepted her weight without the shallow breath of pain that had once followed every demand. Students from nearby equine colleges pointed, whispering, "Is that the rescue from the feeds?" Another replied, "Impossible, he's sound enough." They warmed through serpentines, building elasticity. Noah timed each transition, voice low but sure, a metronome disguised as encouragement. 60 minutes later Valor was loose, supple, eyes bright. Mara slid down, hugging his neck. Her lips brushed the white scar on his withers, a silent pledge that whatever happened next would be faced together. An official approached wearing a headset and a practiced smile. "Inspector Khan, you're slated 5th in the Service Horse Division," immediately following Mr. Vale's entry. Her headset crackled. "Also, there's been a last-minute equipment inspection. Bring your tack to the steward within 20 minutes. Mara recognized the maneuver. Delay nerves, search for disqualifying faults. She nodded, secretly grateful Luna had polished brass until sunrise. Noah walked Valor to the shade of a poplar row, while Mara accompanied the steward. Bits were weighed, reins measured, girth inspected for artificial aids. Everything passed. Yet when Mara returned she found Noah stone-faced, holding a crumpled piece of paper. He handed it over without a word. The letterhead bore the exhibition committee seal. The text revoked Valor's eligibility, citing insufficient verifiable background post-registration. Effective immediately. Signed by a sub-chairman known to sit on Vale's philanthropic board. Mara's stomach folded. She reread the single paragraph, thinking of Luna's silent dawn prayers and Deputy Ruiz's patrol budget they had already spent. Noah waited for her verdict. She inhaled, tasted dust, and tore the page in half. "Regulations allow appeal to the chief judge before class start," she said, voice flat but holding. "Go saddle." He nodded, relief hidden behind pragmatism. They strode to the administrative tower. The secretary at the desk raised a brow at their mud-specked boots but buzzed them through. Chief Judge Arlen Kessler, retired cavalry, surveyed them from behind a desk scattered with rosettes. Mara placed the torn notice on his blotter and spoke with the clipped precision of field testimony. She listed Valor's recovery metrics, training data, and the county's intent to commission him into ceremonial service pending exhibition scores. She finished by setting Luna's drawing, Valor leaping fire, on top. Kessler studied the sketch, then the numbers, then Mara's eyes. He signed a reinstatement form. "Ride well, Inspector. History hates bullies." They exited to find Luna waiting near the gate, allowed by special pass. She wore a ribbon in Valor's color, a muted, earth red. Mara knelt, nodded once. Luna touched the colt's muzzle and whispered, "Come back." Noah legged Mara into the saddle. Time collapsed into drumrolls and trumpet flourishes. Sovereign and Vale entered first, pageantry engineered for cameras, a flawless serpentine, a gallop to halt on a dime, smoke pots erupting as the stallion leapt a flame ring with textbook bascule. The grandstand roared as the scoreboard flashed 93.7. Vale bowed, basking in thunder meant to eclipse whatever followed. Valor walked in through settling smoke. Ash petals drifted against his coat. The sudden hush tasted like disbelief. Mara saluted the judges, circled once, and asked for trot. The colt floated, diagonal pairs whispering across stride marks Sovereign had dug. They navigated the pivot cones so tight a groom later swore the horse turned inside his own shadow. At the noise test, air horns blared. Valor flicked an ear, head steady. Mara felt the crowd's mood tilt, skepticism becoming speculation. They approached the flame ring, last obstacle, still guttering from Sovereign's passage. Heat shimmered. Mara's pulse matched Noah's distant countdown. 3, 2, 1. She closed her leg, lifted the reins. Valor surged, coils releasing into flight. Mid-arc, a firecracker exploded, someone's sabotage. Flame flared higher. Gasps spiraled. The colt tucked tighter, clearing with centimeters spare, landing cat-quiet. He cantered 4 strides, halted square, and bowed his head unbidden. No cloak draped him, yet the gesture carried ceremony. Silence reigned, the kind so absolute it magnified breath and heartbeat. Then applause crashed like surf. Mara's eyes burned. She saluted, then dismounted, leading Valor toward Noah and Luna waiting at the tunnel mouth. As they passed the judge's booth, Kessler rose, removed his old cavalry pin, a brass crossed saber crest, and pressed it into Mara's palm. "For courage," he said. Cameras flashed, capturing history rewriting itself. Vale lurked in shadows beyond the scoring table. Numbers appeared on the digital board, 96.4, the highest in exhibition history. Mara did not look his way, but Valor's left ear rotated toward the Millionaire, as if acknowledging a footnote now rendered irrelevant. Vale opened his mouth. No words emerged. His silence became the loudest headline. After vet clearance they paraded for closing honors. Flags snapped, drums rolled. Legions of past abuse hid beneath regalia, yet each stride declared new ownership of his destiny. Children leaned over rails to touch miracle embodied. Journalists trailed, searching synonyms for redemption. Noah walked alongside, cane forgotten, cheeks wet. Luna marched on Valor's other side, holding her sketchbook like scripture. Mara rode tall above them, buckle inside her jacket warm against her heart. Outside the arena paramedics loaded a competitor injured in an earlier fall. Valor paused, nostrils flaring at antiseptic, then lowered his head until the stretchered gelding stilled. Compassion, not training, guided that gesture, proof paper pedigrees could not replicate. Spectators filmed, and within minutes feeds lit with captions, "The rescue that rescued another." Officials gathered to formalize Valor's commissioning. Under the rotunda they swore him into state service, a brass plaque already ordered. Funding followed automatically. The Hollow would receive feed stipends, vet grants, and a modest salary for Noah as handler. Mara signed the paperwork with a pen that shook only once, when she reached the line labeled Guardian. Afternoon light slanted, gold steeped in dust. Trucks idled, banners furled, and in the hush after spectacle Vale's entourage melted away. He lingered near the warm-up fence, staring at a hoofprint scorched into sand where the fire ring had stood. Mara led Valor past him toward the exit. She neither slowed nor spoke. Yet when she was abreast, Vale exhaled a broken chuckle, a sound smaller than apology but larger than denial. She tipped her helmet, not as concession, but as closure. Outside the main gate Luna waited with a cupcake pilfered from the volunteer tent, icing smeared into a makeshift rosette. She offered it to Mara, who broke off a piece and fed Valor the first sweet he had ever tasted. His lips explored sugar, eyes half closed as though memorizing miracle's flavor. Noah leaned against the trailer, exhaustion carving gentle lines into his face. "Heard hotels are full," he said. "We'll head home tonight." Mara nodded, grateful. The hollow called like a hearth at solstice. They loaded Valor. The ramp lifted. Engines started. Luna climbed into Noah's truck, tucking sketches under her coat. Mara slid into the pickup cab, windows down, letting the scent of cedar chip bedding and diesel intertwine. Traffic crawled past fairground gates where vendors dismantled booths. A boy holding a plastic sovereign figurine shouted, "Officer Valor," and pumped a fist. Mara honked twice. Valor answered with a muted whinny inside the trailer. Highway miles unwound beneath stars. Noah led, Mara followed, headlights tracing silver ribbons across darkness. At the state line they stopped for fuel. Luna handed her father a new drawing under fluorescent glare, Valor galloping beneath constellations, bridle glowing, tail alive with comet dust. Beneath, she wrote, "Thank you for listening to silence." Hours later Hawksbill Hollow emerged, barns silhouetted against a waning moon. They rolled up the lane where frost once snapped like glass. Now thaw left earth soft and forgiving. Noah parked, weary bones resisting motion, yet he hurried to lower the ramp. Valor stepped onto the familiar ground, blew a breath, and shook, sending road grit flying like discarded doubt. He walked into his stall without halter pressure, as though guided by memory of safety. Mara lingered at the gate, palm resting against rough wood. She should have felt triumph, yet her heart nestled in quiet, a reservoir deeper than cheers. The world would move on to newer novelties, but this hollow would keep echo of drums inside weathered boards. She slipped Kessler's saber pin into a crack between posts, letting moonlight catch brass. Some honors belonged to places more than people. Noah leaned beside her. "You did it," she corrected gently. "We did." From the loft Luna observed, pencil already mapping fresh possibilities. Valor teaching rescue colts, Mara lecturing on welfare law, Noah conducting slow-swinging clinics which healed riders as much as horses. The drawing would wait till morning. Beyond the ridge, first hints of dawn paled the sky. Mara stepped into the stall, Valor's quiet breathing filling cedar-scented space. She pressed her forehead to his neck, uttering no words because none were needed. Silence, after all, had carried them here. It would carry them forward. She left the barn, closing the door with care, and walked toward the farmhouse where coffee and sleep shared equal promise. Behind her, the colt nested into straw, muscle, and scar humming agreement with the widening day. Though battles against neglect would continue far beyond these hills, a small flag had been planted tonight on behalf of every discarded soul, proof that when compassion refuses to yield, even a millionaire's laughter can be muted by the thunder of a single determined heartbeat.